Hey, welcome back to. Let me start that again. Let me let me get a drink. But welcome back to Soul Invictus. So, what I want to actually kind of talk a little bit about today is some of my understanding as to what kind of happened here, and reading through the Nag Hammadi, reading through the Old Testament. When I read through the Old Testament in the past, I always wondered certain things about it. And so when you read through Genesis 12:27, it's going to say Terah. This is the record of the descendants of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. Haran died before his father Terah in his native land, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Isaac. Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, wife of the son of Abram, and brought them out of Ur, out of the Chaldeans, to go to the land of Canaan. But when they reached Haran, they settled there. The lifetime of Terah was 205 years. Then Terah died in Haran. Abram's call and migration. The Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from the land of your kinfolk and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. All the communities on earth shall find blessing in you." So this part here, this was like, you're going to bless those who bless you and curse those that curse you. I always wondered why it was written like that. And so when you actually look at Ur is from Sumer, the Sumerians. And when I read about the Sumerian understandings of God, it describes this. It describes this God, just in more detail. Not in a very good detail, not in a very good way. So this is the reason why I look at the Sumerian texts and tablets as giving more detail as to what actually happened, and what Jesus was saying, that the people, the Jews, they followed the devil. The scribes, the Pharisees, the regular people, they followed the devil. They just were not doing what they thought was from the Creator God, but they really weren't. They only had like a part of the truth. They didn't have the whole thing. So when Jesus talks about it, this is why I'm understanding this. This is why I believe that the early Christians were burned, they were tortured, they were attacked all the time, because they got it. And when an organization wants to take over, it wants to control in its own way, to only grant certain people certain power, power structures, which usually always ends up being a pyramid scheme. So, what ended up happening with Jesus and what he had to talk about was very difficult for the people that were the Jews at the time. It was very, very difficult, because they had a long lifetime of understanding things in a certain way. And when Jesus was saying, be good to others, love them, care for them, go out, if you want to preach, go out by twos, go to a house that's peaceful. If it's peaceful, you'll have your peace returned to you. Or no, if they're not peaceful, you have your peace returned to you. If they're peaceful, you'll be able to share it with them. And so this is the reason that I've kind of gone down this way, this path, is because when you read through this whole thing, it gets really confusing, especially the Old Testament. It gets really, really confusing. Like, why would God sort of be a little bipolar with certain things, especially when Moses comes into the scene, whether it was Moses that was doing these acts of fire and brimstone, or if it was his God that was doing it. It seems too destructive. It seems more destructive. The way Jesus described things was basically he was trying to help us, but by doing so, it would create division. And when he was there, they had no need of weapons, but when he was gone, they would need them. Because when Jesus is with us, when the Holy Spirit is with us, because that's what Jesus wanted to do, was bring us the Holy Spirit. When he brings us the Holy Spirit and that love is with us, we have no need to fear these things, because we understand that fear is a big part of what the devil is about. And so that's the reason that Jesus keeps saying his Father. He doesn't necessarily say God too much. Some of the writers might have wrote in God there sometimes, but for the most part, Jesus is saying Father. If you read through John, it's all Father, all his Father, and the Holy Spirit. That's what's in the whole thing, the whole book. John is my Father. And so when I look at the Old Testament and I get really, I sort of question it. I'm like, well, where was Abraham's father? His name was Terah. He was from Ur. He was from Sumer. You look at their records as to what they said was the creation gods, and it matches what's in the Old Testament of the Bible. And just in a more cruel way. Kind of really opens up the understanding as to what they were. And so they were not all that good. They were very manipulative. They wanted to create a slave race for us to work to get gold, which is why gold is still probably an important thing today. It's hard to understand. Then there's deviations as to what that was all about, and you can go further into that, and it gets a little confusing at that point. So I'm not fully in all the knowledge as far as what was the purpose of that, and what were the players, and what was the point. It gets a little lost in translation, it gets a little confusing at that point. But everything I've read points me to that. It points me to the Sumerian tablets. It points me to the fact that Abraham came from those people, and their God and his writing down of the God that favored them was in a good light. But to the Sumerians, it was sort of a mixed bag of things. So when I read through that and I see how that was, and you read through Numbers, it's basically about Moses leaving, and how his God is going to torture and destroy his own people for doing one little thing wrong, or one little thing wrong in this respect or that respect. And later on you read in some of the other Old Testament chapters that it'll say that it was an angel that actually led them through the desert, which made me question, well, wasn't it God? Didn't Moses say it was God? But then later on it says it was an angel leading them through the desert. I know that earlier on it was said in the Old Testament that God wanted to leave them with an angel, but Moses pleaded with them not to. But it doesn't describe whether he actually left or not. It seems to imply that he did stay. But later on when you read into, I think it's Judges, you read into Judges and you're going to read that an angel led them through the desert. It doesn't describe God. Moses describes God. So it gets really confusing in the Old Testament as to who are the players, where do they stand, and how are they to other people. And so when I read all this stuff and then I realized, Abraham's father comes from Ur, Sumer, the Sumerians, their Sumerian records. Read through that. That matches what it says in the Old Testament. It looks like it's just a better description of it. It looks like those gods weren't all the happiest and nicest of sorts. And it makes me understand why Jesus would sort of contest against the people and say that they're following the devil. And why would he say it so much if it wasn't something he believed to be true? So that makes me understand that what Jesus is saying when he's also trying to say things like, you can't put new wine in an old wineskin because the wineskin will burst. What he's trying to say there is he's trying to say that I'm giving you something new that cannot be contained in the old. The old has to go. It's not going to work with what I have to give you. And so later on when they go and, you'll read about he came to bring the sword. He came to bring division. The mother is going to be against the father, and the father against the son, and the son against the father and the mother. Because this division is they're basically going to say, hey, I don't believe what you believe. The parents are going to be upset. And the parents are going to say, no, you have to believe this because this is what we've always believed. But no, this is what Jesus is saying, and this is not. I mean, you want to be on a good side because the Jews did want to be on a good side. I can't blame them for that. Nobody was blaming them for that at all. What Jesus was trying to say was what they were following, the acts, the ways they were doing it, because they wanted to be on a good side. They really did. But what they were doing with some of the traditions they were following and some of the things that they were saying and doing wasn't wholly good. It wasn't in whole good. It was partially good. To what percentage, I can't say. But it wasn't wholly good, like what Jesus was trying to help them with. So when I read through what Jesus had to say and what he wanted, it puts me at odds with a lot of things that were in the Old Testament. And there's proof that the Old Testament God from the creation comes from the Sumerian records of old. It just, there's proofs that prove that. So what does that basically mean? A lot of people go, well, Jesus' God isn't the right God then. No, Jesus is talking about the original creator source of love and good and of holiness. He's talking about the Holy Spirit. Jesus is talking about that. Now, the Old Testament prophets and stuff, they had dreams a lot of the time about what they got from their God, but a lot of them are very weird. A lot of them are somewhat weird. Abraham has to sacrifice his son. The Old Testament gods talked about sacrifices burning of, the reason Cain's sacrifice wasn't as appeasing because he was a farmer. He was a sort of a vegetarian. I don't know necessarily if he was a vegetarian, but he was producing a lot of vegetables and wheat and that sort of thing. So he offered wheat. He didn't offer the blood of animals. Now, in the Sumerian records and some other older records, the gods were appeased by the smell of blood. Now, the Old Testament describes Abel's offering as being better to the Lord because he sacrificed an animal. So, Abel is sacrificing animals. That was appeasing to those gods. Some of the older gods were described as loving the smell of blood. And so, to me, that sounds a little bit vampiric. So it makes me question, were these Old Testament gods good, or were they disguised as being good? Now, when Jesus is constantly describing them as following the devil, it just makes me go, I think they were probably bad. Either they were bad, or their understanding of what the creation source God was bad, or somewhat flawed. So that's a reason I went into looking into this stuff and trying to figure this out. And this is a reason why you can't be accepted as a Catholic for this type of belief, because they want to ascribe the Old Testament as the perfect understanding of the two. As far as one of the original Christians, some of them were killed and burned off because they did not believe in having a centralized pope. Jesus never literally described anything about building an actual physical church. He described what Peter would go through as a stepping stone to the church, the forgiveness that he had, that he portrayed at the end, which was important as far as the prayer that Jesus talks about. Forgive others and pray to God for forgiveness and forgive others. So when it comes down to things, it just makes more sense to me that the earlier Christians sort of had it right. This is what I believe with this, is that they had it right because they were trying to follow the original teachings that Jesus was trying to say. Now, there were a lot of people that had visions or dreams, and they wrote it down. There's a lot of that in Nag Hammadi. People are having dreams of these things that God is telling them. And there are a lot of... The Old Testament Jews would believe in a lot of their prophets having these dreams, and these dreams would correlate to what they believe God wanted to have happen. But even when Jesus is describing in the New Testament, he's basically saying that a lot of the good prophets, the actual prophets, were killed by the people that were the Sadducees and the Pharisees that were there right then. And he talks about it in the New Testament. They were killed by those people because those people looked for power. They looked for a way to be at this top of this kind of pyramid where they could disperse the holiness amongst the people. But really, the temple was supposed to, it seems like what Jesus is saying, the temple is supposed to just be there as a food pantry, for those that need it, for those that want to think about the creation source and be good and loving and caring for other people. It seemed to sort of be like a storage place. And that the temple itself wasn't important. It was what you did for others that is what was important. And so the thing is, it gets a little confusing after a while trying to read all these different, because I've been reading through a lot of the Nag Hammadi stuff, and not all of them say the same thing. So it seems like it was sort of a lucid dream that they were having. They were probably trying to practice some out-of-body stuff, or they just had a dream and they try to write down that interpretation of that dream. And for them, it means something. But for somebody else, it's very hard to determine. Usually if you have a dream later on, you'll figure out what it means. And it's usually your spirit side talking to you, trying to help give you some guidance. And sometimes it shows you things that sometimes you'll have negative things attack you and they'll give you nightmares and stuff. Sometimes your spirit guide will give you things to help you throughout your life. Sometimes you'll just see things in your dreams that'll help you progress forward and be able to make some right calls. Maybe you're maybe you're lacking in courage. Maybe you need to encourage yourself, and you do that, and that happens in a dream. That can happen. So, yeah, as far as this all is concerned, I'm just trying to relate that I'm under the understanding that Jesus was trying to say, you guys got most of it. You guys are trying to do the right thing, but you're getting a lot of it wrong. I'm going to help you out and try to understand that this is more to do with your soul than it has to do with your physical body. Your body it's not the important thing. And this has to do with your soul. Now, trying to say that to people that are just, obsessed with sex and power and wealth and all this kind of stuff, they don't want to understand it in the way that it's said. They want to understand it in their way. They want to understand it. How does this work sexually? How does this work on a food level? How can I use this in those ways? But you can't. You can't. The way Jesus was saying it, you just can't. You have to either listen to Jesus and what he had to say and how he had to say it, or listen to your own personal interpretation of it and just flat out be wrong. So that's what I wanted to say today. I wanted to kind of help you see where I'm at. So what I'm at is not going to espouse a very Catholic applaud or a very Jewish applaud. And it's not to put them down. It's just to say that if you want to understand what Jesus was saying, what he was trying to describe was peace, love, caring, compassion, forgiveness. Those are the things of God. And that is what gives you the fruits to get to heaven. It has nothing to do with the temple. It has nothing to do with trying to put yourself above others, trying to play out traditions that let you think you're doing God's will. It has nothing to do with that. And so, yes, Jesus does contend with a lot of what the Jewish faith believers were talking about. But it's not anti-Semitic. It's just saying he's trying to help you out because he wanted you to gain the understanding of it. And a lot of them did not want to have that. They wanted to keep doing things the way they were doing and just incorporate a couple things into their lives. And Jesus was saying, no, you can't do that. You'd have to change. So you'd have to change to be more helpful, more fruitful for other people. And that's not what happened. And as far as what a lot of Catholics, as far as connecting it with Catholicism, is that a lot of Catholicism is basically just gone and done almost the same things that the Jewish priests have done. They haven't really changed much. They just wanted to incorporate things and make things their own. Jesus never physically told them how to build a temple. He's a carpenter. You think he'd have some knowledge on it. I think he would. I'm sort of being sarcastic there. I hope you understand that. But he never physically said that. He was talking about a rock on his church. Everything he had to do, he was trying to say it in an imaginative way, in a metaphorical way, to help you understand there's something more spiritually going on here. There's something spiritually going on inside of you when you do good works for other people. And when he said that is around the time when Peter was asking forgiveness. And Jesus was telling other people that that's a part of the key. That's one of the last points in John. Usually stories conclude with the point of the story. John concludes with that because forgiveness was a part of the key. Now, a lot of other religions that believe in karma believe that you need to get rid of your karmic debt, which is essentially the same thing Jesus is saying right there. So if you look at all this logistically and you try to get the understanding of what Jesus was saying, not your own understanding, not trying to take things and go, no, this is what he was saying. He wanted us to eat his flesh and drink his blood. No, that's basically cannibalism. He did not want that. He wanted you to take the experiences that he was giving to them and distribute that with your friends. Be giving to others like I have been giving to you. This is me. This is who I am. I am giving of everything that I have to you. Everything that other people gave to me, I give all to you. That is what Jesus is saying when he's saying, I give you my flesh, or, eat my flesh, drink my blood. These are metaphors to help you understand something. A lot of things he was saying was very out there. When he was talking to the Samaritan woman and telling her that she could have a living water inside of herself. She asked where she could get this living water so she could never return to the well. It's funny. It's kind of a joke because she can't, if you have a living well inside of you that you can't see, but it's constantly flowing with living water, constantly giving you life. That's you being giving to others. She was looking to how she could find that, but she was thinking in a physical way when Jesus was talking in a spiritual way. She never had a physical well bursting within herself to feed herself water. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so when Jesus is saying that and Jesus is saying other things that are correlating, this is where this goes. I want to help you, but you have to understand that to gain that help, you have to be giving and caring. You have to do things in particular ways. When he asked her, where is your husband? You need to be with the person that you were meant to be with. That's what he was telling her. She was surprised. She didn't know how he could know that, but he knew. And so, yeah, that's the reason I wanted to do a lot of this stuff. I think I summed a lot of it up, actually. I hope you enjoy this little episode. If you do, please leave a like, leave some comments too. It'd be nice to hear from some people here. And, if you wanted to talk about some stuff, let me know. We can have a discussion and talk about a few things. I know that this is going to be a little tough for some people to grasp and put in there because they want to believe in these traditions. I think churches are good for community and for gaining a sense of community. But ultimately, if you really want to know what Jesus had to say, you have to read through the New Testament. So you're only going to get little spotchy paragraphs of the New Testament mixed in with a lot of the Old Testament when you're at church. You're not going to get a straight up read through New Testament read. You're just not going to get it. So what you're needing, you're not getting the full part of, which is why I'm doing this, is to help you get the full grasp of that. So most of the other episodes I've done where I'm reading through the New Testament and I'm reading through the same correlating parts of the New Testament, I'm trying to get all the readers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all the writers and what they were saying and put it together where all the pieces will fit. So that's what I'm trying to do with that, to help you out. So, yeah, that's all I got. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know. Leave some comments. I know I've got a lot of lurkers, but you can definitely go ahead and leave some comments. And that's something I think a lot of people don't understand too much about. I mean, I've been through a lot of very heavy monk Catholic religion teachings, schooling, and that sort of thing. And the fact is, not all of them try to teach you to read through all this by yourself. In fact, they don't really want you to. The problem is that a lot of people do go really far out there with a lot of how they believe. Like, according to a lot of people, like the Illuminati and the bloodlines and then this and that and the other thing and the Freemasons, they want to focus on the blood because the Rosicrucians believe that, you know, there's a line of Jesus Christ out there that Jesus made, and none of that's even true. None of that's even remotely close to the truth. And they want to use this bloodline to set themselves up as the pinnacle point of which they are kings of this world. That's really all there is to it. There's nothing more to that. And magical beliefs and rituals they try to cast and all this and that. It's just a lot of... I mean, they can try to emanate the reality. That's kind of true. They can actually kind of do that, but none of that's important. None of that's it's not powerful enough or important enough to even worry about. So all that stuff is just like, it's like a little club that got out of hand. It got carried away with itself, and it's like, I'm very important. Not really. But that's all I got for today. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you later. Take care. Have a good one.